returned with an all-new episode of Pinal's People. We're joining you from Skydive, Arizona, and today our guest is the incredible Sara Curtis. Sara is an active skydiver, an occasional stuntwoman for film and television, and a council member with the city of Eloy. Sara, thank you so much for being on the show.
Happy to be here.
So, could you give some insight into your background and your story? How'd you end up here in Eloy?
Well, I've lived in Eloy for about 20 years. Before that, I was born in the Great White North in Canada, and I learned skydiving there as a hobby. When I got more serious about it, I visited Eloy for a world record skydiving camp. And at that camp, I met a local Eloy man who is now my husband, Steve Curtis. We hit it off, got married, and I ended up moving to Eloy and becoming a professional skydiver at that time. I ditched the regular job thing and became a skydiver. We kind of built up some businesses, and we did a team, competed at the national world level for a while. We coached the military, we coached civilians, do occasional stunt work, like you mentioned, sometimes demonstration jumps, so flags and different things like that. Lots of cool things in skydiving, and Eloy's the mecca of skydiving, so it's the best place to be for that.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'd love to know, so what drew you to skydiving?
It was really random. Just, met some people who were going skydiving on the weekend and went with them and sort of found it interesting. Another friend and I started together and we took lessons, and it slowly just kind of creeped up on me. It was the real draw is that it really challenges both the body and mind, and that's what I loved about it.
Mm-hmm. And so I know you mentioned that one of the big factors for you is that it challenges the body and mind, but I would love if you could speak about, after so many years of doing this professionally, what's the thing you've come to love most about it?
I think the community is a really amazing part of it. The people that are involved in skydiving, they're not your typical average person. They're definitely a little bit out there. People are always saying, why would you want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane? I can't answer that question because I just want to, and so do those people as well. That part's really great. Also, just the physical fitness you need to have to stay at top levels. It keeps pushing you to be healthy, be fit, especially as getting older. It's always a challenge to, keep up with that stuff. I love that sort of thing. And just the mental game. I think I'd be a different person today if it wasn't for learning how to skydive.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. What an amazing story. And so, Sara, too, one of the things I would love to speak to you about, we mentioned also that you have a career as a stuntwoman, and you've worked on films and television. What motivated you to get involved in something like that?
Well, I think every skydiver's dream would be to be in a movie, but really it just kind of happened because I was the right sort of size and fit for the role that I was doubling. There's some other people, mostly people who are top skydivers in California, that sort of dominate that stunt work industry. But sometimes there's sort of a niche type of stunt that needs to be done by someone who specializes in some of those free fall disciplines. And I happened to be one of them, happened to be the right measurements, and it worked out for a few different jobs. So it was really great.
What was the first movie you were ever asked to stunt in?
The biggest movie I've ever been in was Black Widow. So that was... I stunt doubled both of the main characters that were played by, one was Scarlett Johansson and one was Florence Pugh, both really amazing actresses, and I never got to meet them. So myself and the other stunt double, Roberta, her and I are similar sized, and the characters were similar size. So, we were switching back and forth depending on what needed to be done for the stunts in the wigs, and they were sort of CGing out our faces. And I think those women, those actresses did a lot of the stunt work too, but we just filled in for the really tricky skydiving scenes and falling scenes and stuff like that. So
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
We actually got nominated for a stunt award, didn't win it. The Bond movie won, but
But
that was pretty
still,
cool.
That's really impressive.
Yeah.
For sure. And for our audience members who might not really know much about skydiving and might not know much about stunt work, I mean, can you express like how many hours of work does it take to just fill in for a movie like that?
Well, I think that scene was like 2 minutes of little clips because it was a big, long falling scene, and Scarlett Johansson like grabs a parachute, puts it on in free fall, and then rescues Florence Pugh, who had already like blown up the space station they were on and was falling, and so there was lots of different complex shots, falling shots, grabbing shots, chasing stuff in free fall shots, and then jumping off a parachute shots and tracking away. And then there was a chase scene with these sort of robot police guys. And so that we were actually shooting for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And, they also, as you know, in movies, a lot of stuff is special effects. So, they have to film like backgrounds and plates and mix it all together. And then I think the real fun starts afterwards with getting as much airtime for the actual, actors and actresses as possible, and just minimizing what we do and making it look realistic. That's, I think, all part of the excitement of doing a big budget film, for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. For about a couple minutes, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like the moments of me seeing my body is like boop, 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 boop.
Yeah. Wow, that is incredible. So shifting gears a little bit, so you obviously already have this amazing career as a skydiver, pretty interesting career as a stunt woman. What made you decide I would love to be on Eloy City Council?
It was actually a friend who was a skydiver. He and I worked on some parachute manufacturing together, and he had been part of a family back in Europe. He was from Luxembourg, who had always served in their local city government. And when he moved here, he just wanted to do it because that was something you did. And he got involved, really into it, and he encouraged me and convinced me to run, really put on the heavy pressure. I actually was really not interested in being a politician at all. I thought, well, why would I do that? But he found it interesting. He convinced me. I did it, and I was like, wow, this is a lot more rewarding than I ever thought it would be. Obviously, it's not a perfect world like any job or thing that you do, but it's definitely cool to be involved in the planning of your city.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to George.
Yeah, thanks, George.
And so obviously that's what motivated you initially. What got you thinking about, you know what, I'm going to run for re-election this past year?
Gosh, that's a tough question because I'm really busy. I have a lot of different jobs. I work contract work, and there's always I'm juggling a huge, crazy schedule. And sometimes I have large periods where I'm just like going 24/7, and other times where I might have 3 weeks off. And I was like, I just don't know if I can give it my all. But when I told people, I don't think I'm going to run again, everybody was like, oh no, yeah, I got to run again. And, friends, family, people, fellow council members, all sort of convinced me, yeah, you should do it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And here I am back again. So happy to be here.
That is awesome. And so Sarah, I would love if you could speak to, because this is now your second term, is that correct?
Yes.
So what do you wish more people, it could be in Eloy or could even just be the greater Pinal County community. We were talking off camera about all the different cities that make up Pinal, and of course a new city that will be as well. But what do you wish more people knew about serving on city council and why it's important?
I think that a lot of people don't really understand how local government works. They just sort of, and I really didn't either. So, they just sort of take for granted, like, okay, the trash pickup comes and the water, comes out of the tap, and, these roads get fixed and blah, blah, blah. And they sort of don't realize that, everything comes from our tax dollars and there's a staff at work that rolls this up into a budget, and it all has to be reviewed and decided upon, and each decision, checked with the public and make sure that everybody's okay with it. And there's a huge process. And I think people, if they understood that process, they could just get involved more and kind of have their say, because a lot of times people are frustrated by something that happens, or they're like, why couldn't this happen, or why couldn't that happen? But really it could, you know, someone just has to make it happen, and a group of people have to want it. And I think if people understood the process more, they would get involved, and you know, everyone would benefit from the collaboration.
Yeah. And what do you love about being a part of Eloy?
I love that it's a small town, but that it's close to big cities. I travel a lot, so it's great to, you know, go over to Phoenix or go over to Tucson when I have to fly somewhere. But I'm not dealing on the reg with crazy traffic and, you know, having to have just like tons and tons and tons of density around me. I love we've got the mountains nearby. Picacho Peak State Park is amazing. I'm there all the time. Newman Peak. And the skydiving center. You can really have a beautiful kind of outdoorsy life here, but then still be close to amenities and still be close to city stuff, you know, that you kind of need to live in the modern world with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Sarah. So one last question for you. And this is a question we've made our mission to ask everyone who comes on the show. And I'm really curious to hear what you have to say, which is many, many years from now, when people look at your career in skydiving, your work in stunt work, as we mentioned, and then what you've accomplished for the city of Eloy, what do you hope they remember most about your story?
It's a good question, and I don't know.
We get that a lot.
Because I've done so many different things, but you know, I hope with the skydiving, I've really enjoyed being part of teams that have promoted women in skydiving. We've done a demo team. We did some world records that were women specific. We did a lot of mixed men's and women's record, but worked hard to get women going up the ranks in leadership. In regular life, I think now in America, I feel like it's a pretty good situation for women in most cases, but not in all issues. And in skydiving, it is too, but there's still, like any sport, and especially extreme sports, only 15% of skydivers are women.
Yeah.
So, making women understand that if that's what they want to do and that's their dream, it's totally open to them. And I think skydiving is also a bit of a sport that can be expensive. It can be intimidating and dangerous. And I think that's not necessarily what, you know, women have had the ability to just jump into that kind of thing. But as women get more equality around the world, niche things like this become more accessible to them. So that's really cool to kind of be remembered for that and be a part of that. And just to be remembered as a top skydiver who contributed a lot to work with training the military. That's something in my job that I really love, and it's super rewarding because those guys actually use it from time to time, and when they do it, they need to be on the money and saving lives, and I think that's really amazing and rewarding. And the movie stuff's fun too. But for council, I don't know what's going to happen, in the next 4 years, but I feel really good about being part of a team that is kind of modernizing Eloy. We're doing a lot of work on our infrastructure, on our systems, on our general plan, on sort of our goals for the city, and kind of streamlining everything so that it all works together. And I think being part of the team that's doing that is hopefully going to, as Eloy grows, it'll grow in a good way, not in a way that people are just like, oh man, it's getting too crazy around here. There's too many people. We don't want that. We want it to grow in a way where people who live here still love living here, and that, oh, wow, our city got better because we have this new park, or we got this great new restaurant, or there's some cool new businesses. Whatever people would desire to make their life better, it's good to be a part of that as the city gets bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Sara Curtis, thank you so much for being on the show. We loved having you on.
Thank you so much.